We acknowledge that the land that we meet on today is the traditional land of the Kaurna people and that we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Kaurna people as the custodians of the Adelaide region and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still as important to the Kaurna people today. We also pay respect to the cultural authority of Aboriginal people visiting or attending from other areas of South Australia and Australia. And we also recognise that this week is National Reconciliation Week. On behalf of the City of Burnside, I gratefully acknowledge and pay respect to those who gave their lives for this country and its people. We pray for understanding and guidance in our debate as we make decisions that will impact on the lives of all those who reside, study, work in and visit the City of Burnside. Grant us wisdom as we serve our community. Please be seated. I welcome members of the gallery and ask them to observe in respectful silence as the Chamber deliberates on matters that relate to the City of Burnside. Should there be a fire, we are well equipped. I hope the truck's parked out the front. Should there be a fire or any other emergency, the alarm will sound and you are asked to follow directions of the council staff. I need to remind all council meetings are live streamed through the City of Burnside website, and a copy of tonight's agenda is available by downloading from this website. I remind elected members of the importance of using their microphones appropriately so that those at home can hear clearly, and please turn off your mobile phones or onto silent. If you have to have an emergency call, that is acceptable and no problem. Okay. Apologies, we have none. Leave of absence. Can I have a mover and a seconder for a leave of absence request for Councillor Hughes, please? Harvey Jones and Councillor Piggott. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Thank you. Unanimous? I was going to say anonymous. Confirmation of minutes. May I have a mover? Councillor
I'm happy to move, but I have a slight amendment,
okay.
A correction. On page 9, at motion C12073, paragraph 2, the report should highlight but not be limited to the following considerations in relation to climate change mitigation and adaptation, especially in relation to WSUD, and it's got tree placement, it should be tree replacement, biodiversity management. So if we can just add...
You got that? Thank you, Robert.
Got missed. Otherwise, I'm happy with the rest of the minutes. Thank you.
All right, so we have a mover, we have a seconder, Councillor Hughes. All those in favour? Carried. We have no deputations, we have no petitions, and we have no public questions to ask, but we do have one in response from last week to Mr Booth.
Thank you, Mayor. Where an answer is unable to be given at the meeting, it's required to be brought back to a future meeting of Council in the public question time section by the Chief Executive Officer. At the meeting held on the 14th of May 2019, Mr Bernard Booth of Rose Park asked, in relation to parking matters, 3 questions as follows. Please could you explain what greater equity for all road users means? In response, I can confirm that equity relates to all our stakeholders having equitable access to community resources. In addition, Council will seek to accommodate the parking needs of visitors, businesses and community facilities in a manner that is open and clear. Permit parking schemes help to improve amenity for particular classes of road users in locations where there is insufficient off-street parking and where on-street parking is restricted. Permit parking also helps to balance the needs of the local community with those of the broader community in high-demand areas. Mr Booth also asked, are we responsible for the commercial premises on Fullerton Road, parking up Alexandra Avenue and some surrounding streets? In response, I can advise that local government is responsible for parking controls on all streets subject to the Department of Planning, Transport and Infrastructure requirements, standards and codes of practices, etc. Established student drop-off and collection areas exist adjacent to Rose Park School on both Grant Avenue and Alexandra Avenue. Currently, Burnside administration is not aware of any safety issues and the school has not indicated that these areas are inadequate. There are no proposed changes. These restricted areas, however, administration would be pleased to review the situation if requested. Mr Booth's final question was, Why do we have to have open parking in Alexandra, unrestricted parking in Alexandra Avenue? In response, there is no final decision on the topic of unrestricted parking. A report relating to our progress on this issue is included in the agenda for this evening. Thank you.
And I believe there was a concern that was raised, and that has been followed up by Mr. Cooper. On a personal level, which is what we discussed. Section 9, the questions on notice, they've been received, they've been tabled. Because we do have an audience here tonight who need to be out there in case there is an emergency on the freeway and they have to attend an accident, I'm praying that you don't. That one in Queensland must have been horrific. So I'm going to move the CFS motion to the very beginning from urban and community. So it's 13, we're going to look at 13.9 initially, and then we'll go on with the agenda exactly as it is stated for the rest of the agenda. But I feel it's important, these guys should not be inconvenienced by sitting here for another, could be half an hour before we get a result of the next one that's on our list. Don't need to. I'm happy for you to approve it, but you don't have to vote on it. Now, do I have someone who wishes to withdraw this one for debate? Councillor Piggott, you do?
I wish to raise or move in accordance with the officer's recommendation. And look, it's a pretty easy one for mine, I feel. I was able to go and look at the CFS a couple of weeks ago, when a number of us did. And what the report talks about is the ability for that current facility to accommodate the trucks that CFS require ongoing to do what they do. And I actually did think that the solution that's put in the report here, where a shed is built to the southern end of the existing building to allow the new appliance to actually have direct access onto the street, and also sorts out a number of problems that exist here and now with that building, was a pretty neat solution. We're both, I guess, a landlord and also a neighbour of the CFS, but we're also quite dependent on the CFS in regard to what it does do throughout the year in regard to responding to emergencies. So I actually think the recommendation that administration have worked out is an excellent one. They've allocated the money, the $50,000. The taking of some car parks and turning into and being used for the new shed is a great idea, and I don't feel that there's particularly any downsides in regard to this. So I feel we should take the officer's recommendation and approve the $50,000 and commencement of the project.
Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Lemon?
I agree with all of that, and I'm very happy to second this. I'm presuming that you are actually going for option 2?
Yes.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Cornish, I think I missed you on the screen. I apologise for that, but now I'll have to go to Councillor Davey and then you. Councillor Davey.
That's all right, we can all have our say. Thank you, Your Worship. I wish to move a slight amendment at 5. So it's an addition to read, and I'm sorry I didn't have a chance to send this to you, to read that the council note the new shed building will be subject to and assessed against all necessary community consultation and requirements under the Development Act 1993. And then the addition is, and in recognition of its location within a residential area, comma, that the new shed building and its surrounds be replanted with improved general plantings and replacement trees. So the report acknowledges this, and that there will be some, with the changes to the apron and the surrounding area, that that there will need to be some trees removed. I think a couple of trees removed, sadly. And I know the officers have provided gardens and maintained gardens, and even have a memorial and commemorative garden there to a firefighter who was lost. But I just wanted this put in the motion to actually ensure that there is that drive to actually soften that whole area, replace all of the underplantings which are full of bird life, and the trees, and to soften that whole area, because the concrete will be quite stark, and there are residents surrounding it. So I hope you'll support that small amendment. Thank you.
Is that required to be an amendment, or are you happy, the mover and seconder, to accept that as an addition?
Yeah, look, I don't have a problem with that. Although I would say it's probably just surrounds need to be refined as opposed to building. But I'm going to put down.
Okay. All right, so you're happy for it to be accommodated into the motion, and you are Councillor Lemon? All right, so the motion will remain the motion rather than having to move an amendment. All right, now Councillor Cornish.
Thanks, and I'm going to offer a variation slightly to the mover and seconder. No, not an amendment, just a variation. It's really grammar. So in number 3, in the first line, instead of their its place, first line, and its place. It's an organisation, not... And number 4, that this at the beginning, that this amount. And could that amount is subject, not be subject? Thank you. If the first and seconder accept them.
I think that's a slip rule, so I don't think...
I know,
there's
I
no
was just
issue
being
there.
pedantic, sorry.
Yeah. I have no one else on the screen, so are you happy for this motion to be put? Looks like it. Okay, so those in favour, please raise your hands. Those against, unanimously carried. And thank you again for all the service you provide to not only our Burnside community, but our state and national community. Thank you. Thank you. Right, now we can move back to the agenda as is printed, and we start with motions on notice, number 10.1, and that is, I believe, Councillor Henschke.
I, Councillor Henschke, do hereby give notice of my intention to move the following motion. That Council reappoint Mr Jeff Vogt to the position of Independent Mayor to the ERA Water Board. Member, independent member. Could I please have the motion? I just need the, yep. Thank you.
It doesn't need to be rescinded first before.
Yes.
Could you please not give instructions and allow the person who's in charge, who's taking the motion, to continue rather than interrupting?
That Council undertakes that I, Councillor Henschke, move that the report be received. 1. 2. That Council undertakes a secret ballot process, if required, as identified in Attachment B of this report, to determine the elected member to be appointed to the positions of member and deputy member of the ERA Water Board, be rescinded.
That's right.
And I move this.
And you speak to it.
Thank you. The rationale for this rescission was at the last ordinary meeting we decided on this motion, and the current office holder is an independent non-council employee, Mr Jeff Vogt, and he has fulfilled his obligations and he's provided regular reports to council where required. in addition to representing council at other forums such as workshops and planning sessions. Why this needs to be rescinded is that generally, for the number of terms for a board member to protect corporate memory is 2 or 3 terms, a term being 3 to 4 years. And this is best practice, leading practice recommendations from document called Director Tenure, Effective Governance. I do hope you will support me in this, and we continue to have Councillor Sarah Hughes as the the proxy if required. We do come at a critical time in the ERA Water business, where tonight we will be noting reports from ERA Water that detail what will be happening with the $2.3 million that we have last approved. I do hope that the ERA Water project is a success, and to support the success of the project, we need the capabilities of someone like Mr. Jeff Vogt, who was last employed because the board required a person who had the experience in strong governance, experience in stormwater management, experience in the water, commercial and technical setting, and a demonstrated track record. If we don't, there's a risk that if we don't continue with this current independent member with his roles, skills and experience outlined, that there is a risk that we put the project at risk, and there's a loss in corporate memory. There will be savings made if we continue with Mr. Jeff Vogt by way of transition costs and the indirect cost of reduced performance levels. So I do hope you support this rescission. Thank you.
Do we have a seconder, please? Councillor Turnbull.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to support Councillor Henschke on this, that he has had a lot of experience, he's done the hard yards, and it would be to start again with somebody else takes time and effort and energy. So I would support the fact that Mr. Jeff Vogt is voted back on.
Oh, I'd like to speak. Sorry, a little bit late. Yep. We did debate this last meeting, and probably the issue is, look, I don't feel the argument of losing knowledge is an automatic stand-up. I don't think we should, as a chamber, automatically renew people for a certain time in risk of losing what they already know. What that loses us, I think, is the opportunity to have someone better there that serves us better. And in fact, what the debate, I think, is whether it's independent, and it's not specific to Jeff Vogt. Certainly this is about rescinding the decision we made last time to put an elected member on there. And so the debate's really about whether the decision that was taken last month stays in play, which this chamber felt an elected member is the best way to go forward. And I think I've given this a lot of thought since Lillian put in the rescission motion to sort of see whether that is the case. And I do think that is the case, irrespective of who the elected member is. I think there's two good things this chamber will get from an elected member as opposed to an independent member as our representative on the board. And that's communication to the board and communication from the board. In regard to communication to the board, we've just been through this rather gut-wrenching situation of the $2.3 million additional funding limit. And I think that showed that we're not duly communicating to the board of Era Water in regard to what concerns people around this chamber in regard to the project. We took a decision, we did a lot of research on it, and the board was extremely cooperative in that. But what we ended up in a issue with the other two councils, the other two owners, coming back to us, and while I don't disrespect what they did, I don't think that they had taken their decision with due respect of the financial situation of the project and the risk going forward. And I actually think we did. So I think it's important that, and if that was to happen going forward, or perhaps if you look at how we could have done that better, one way would have been that our member on the board could have conveyed that much better, I think, to the board while that was all happening, and I think that would have perhaps changed, perhaps not, but it would have put the board in a better position as a regional subsidiary of how one of its three owners and its biggest customer going forward, how it was feeling about Era Water. And that may have changed, not necessarily asking for 2.3, I'm sure it wouldn't have, but I would have hoped it might have changed how they dealt with Burnside and how they dealt with that, asking for that additional money. I think it would have had them perhaps more respectful of the fact that, of the concerns we had and have. I don't think they went away. I think we still have them. So I think an elected member there, that wouldn't have been such a problem. And I think we would have really gained from that. Going the other way, I think having an elected member as the board member gives us much more, will give us much greater communication come back the other way as well. We did have a situation in the last council where our independent board member, where the board actually did provide information, formal information to this council as to where the project sat, and it was actually contradicted on the night by a conversation that our independent member had with one of our elected members. Not all 13 of them, but just one of them. And that's a difficult position to be in. What an elected member on the council, on the board would mean is that we can actually, you'll have access to them all the time. They'll be here every second Tuesday like you are. We would still get the reports we currently get from our independent member. And I think the communication of how things are going within the board, we sit there as one of three owners and then with an independent person. And so with that dynamic, sometimes it's not actually the decisions they make, which we can read in the minutes in a limited way, but perhaps it's the background and the other issues that are rolling through that are quite important for us to know as well. And we would get that from an elected member. We can't hope to get that from an independent member. So that's what we're discussing here, really. It's not whether it's Jeff vote or not. It's elected member or independent member. Thank you.
Councillor Dawes.
Thank you, Mayor. This motion was considered very late at the last meeting. The motion included one of the options that were put forward by administration. So we didn't know which option we were going to go for. We're talking about 10:30 at night. I don't think good decisions are made at 10:30. So in hindsight, I think the best approach is to start again and to reassess what is the best approach. Helga's, Councillor Lemon's querying of the conflict of interest provisions in the Act raised a concern about having two elected members on the Era Water Board, and I know that's been explained by the CEO. But Sarah and I, so Councillor Hughes and I, have probably been the only two councillors who have seen Jeff vote in action. And I thought he was an excellent independent representative for Burnside at a particularly challenging time. So I'd put him up fairly high, but I'm not saying that Jeff Vogt should be the representative. I'm just saying that I agree that we should rescind the previous motion, have another debate at a reasonable time, which is now. Thank you.
Councillor Hughes.
I just had a question for the CEO. Can you confirm the nature of the representatives of Norwood, Payneham, St Peters and Walkerville councils on the Yarra Water Board? I understand they have EMs.
Through the Mayor, the representative for Walkerville is their CEO, and the representative for Norwood is one of their councillors, John Minnie.
Might I just add to that that John Minnie is an ex-engineer with SA Water and was appointed because of his experience in water engineering. Councillor Davis it is, and then Councillor Lemon.
Yeah, I think for me the biggest thing is communication. As Councillor Piggott said, so I have concerns about what's happening in the board meetings and flowing that information back to us. I have absolutely no reservation that Jeff does an excellent job. It's not about that for me. It's about, for this council, I think there's been a number of questions that if we had someone that we're meeting on a regular basis who could chat with us informally about how the project was going perhaps and answer any questions we might have by a simple telephone call, I think a lot of those questions would have been answered, and also that answers to questions that elected members have can be pursued by that elected member, so they can go out and find things. Like I certainly have concerns about the drive to go and find new customers, and that is a strategic direction for me. That is a strategic question. I don't see as part of that era water board that you necessarily need an expert in engineering or someone who is an expert in it. Often experts aren't that great at managing a business. It's the person with a strategic direction who can look after the customer, which is us, who makes a far better manager of any particular scheme. And in my view, we are best placed to elect a councillor from this chamber to go and carry forward our strategic objective and make sure that we as a customer, they're being looked after. We also do have people who are highly qualified in that area. They don't need to be, but it's going to add to their understanding, and they'll be able to pick it up more quickly or hit the ground running more quickly. I don't agree with the consideration that it was considered late. At the end of the day, we made that decision. That's what this debate is for. So, in my view, you should vote this rescission motion down, and we should go to a ballot now to elect a councillor to that position to manage the strategic direction. In terms of the knowledge or engineering capacity, that won't be affected at all. You still have that engineering team, you still have that the knowledge within the group, but what the person is going to do on that board is to determine the strategic direction of that board, and I think that our representative should come from our council.
Councillor Lemon.
Yes, given that my name was mentioned, I felt that I needed to speak and explain myself in case people didn't remember what I was talking about last time. I was concerned that there would be no conflicts of interest, so whoever the representative from this council was, and we had made a decision that it was going to be a representative from this council, I was concerned that they would be able to stay in the room, participate in debate and give us opinion. And my concerns were completely allayed. Yes, they can do that. We've got 3 subsidiaries. We've got East Waste, and we have an elected member on that. We've got Eastern Health Authority, and we have an elected member on that. And I think the time has come for us to have an elected member on this particular subsidiary. It's a subsidiary. Norwood's got their CEO. This is a person that's still fairly closely connected with council and under the direction of council.
Norwood doesn't have the CEO. Norwood has John Minnie. It's Walkerville that has the CEO.
Walkerville has one of them has the CEO, and that is still in the tent, not outside the tent. I think it's time for us to have someone in the tent for all the reasons that have been made tonight. I think that we do need to have that communication between the two. I think the subsidiary is at the stage now where it deserves to be treated like our other subsidiaries. So I won't be supporting this motion.
Councillor Cornish.
Thank you, Mayor Monso. I've just got a question of the administration. It's spurned on from something Councillor Dawes sort of mentioned, and it's in relation to process in terms of starting from scratch. If this motion were to get up, that we rescind, and then we move to that agenda item to complete, would we be able to do that 1 and 2 again, or would that make the rest of that motion, because we stopped the meeting at a particular point in time? Just sort of trying to work out the mechanics. if this motion gets up, that we start from scratch. The next motion doesn't get up, and we do start from scratch with the motion, at 13.1. Like the process.
Through the Mayor, so if this motion to rescind is successful, what is still on the books is the outstanding matter of appointment of an elected member via ballot. So Council at the last meeting resolved it would go to a secret ballot process. It hasn't done that. So if this is rescinded, then it's starting from scratch.
Can I offer, does rescinding this motion mean, doesn't it legally mean we can't actually move the same motion for a period of time if we actually rescind it? No, if it fails, we can't rescind it. But if we rescind that the report be received and that we go through a secret ballot process, so that item 1 and 2 up on the screen, if that's rescinded, can we vote for it again at 13.1?
Through the Mayor. Yes, so if this rescission motion is successful, you're basically starting from scratch, and you can resolve the same thing again. So the Council can resolve to have the report received and to undertake a secret ballot process for the election of an elected member, if it chooses to.
Brilliant, thank you. I just wanted
any other option.
I just wanted to ask that question. Thank you.
Councillor Carbone.
Thank you, Your Worship. A question to perhaps yourself or maybe the administration, and I think I'm asking this question on behalf of most of the new elected members here. I'm going to assume that this very debate took place 2 years ago when Jeff was appointed, when there was a discussion around having an in-house board member versus an independent board member. I'm just wondering, as a new elected member, what was the rationale behind having an independent board member at the time?
If I remember rightly, it was never debated. It was a decision that we were going to appoint an independent board member. I don't remember any, and I can be corrected if I'm wrong, but I don't believe there was ever any discussion of an elected member being on that board. It was a decision by the previous council to appoint an independent, and we went through a process of interviewing. I know the Mayor and at least 2 other elected members, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. 2 other elected members were on the selection panel for Jeff Vogt, and Jeff Vogt was appointed because of his accounting background and his experience on a number of boards. And he's currently on the Brownhill Creek board as well as the Irrawater board. I'm not aware, I don't know if there's any other information that I should be providing or...
Maybe if I could ask the question another way.
Yeah.
What was the rationale at some point in time for the previous council to move away from having a staff member on the board? I seem to recall there was a staff member on the board at the time, to having an independent board member.
Can I just explain? Initially, the CEO was the board member, and there was at that time there was a lot. The government was playing around with the conflict of interest, and at that time, the CEO decided to withdraw from that position. The other 2 CEOs remained. Barry Cant was appointed in Paul's place, and he continued that position for at least 2 years. Must have been at least 2 years, maybe 3, a year. Okay, and then I'm not sure what motivated it. You might have to fulfil that part of it.
Through the Mayor, the Mayor's partially correct. In that I was appointed, I resigned given the issues surrounding conflict of interest. Barry Cant was the deputy member for the board. and the council didn't appoint him as the primary member. He attended meetings as his role as a deputy member for a period of approximately 12 months. In that period of time, the legislation was changed. This was 2016, I believe, to remove the conflict of interest provisions. That generated a discussion about who the best person for representation on the board was. It was our view that it shouldn't be someone from the administration, it should be someone else. And the best option at that point in time was that it be an independent person with the skills to assist the board at that point in time, given what they were going through at that point in time.
So do you have any other questions, Councillor Carbone, or do you wish to speak? You're gone now. Okay. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't support the rescission motion. I think we made a sound decision that in the last meeting, whether we made it at 7 o'clock with respect or at 10:30. I think we've got quite practiced at making pretty sound decisions at a late hour, and very important decisions as well. My concern relates to the provision of information back to council. In a regional subsidiary, and as has already been mentioned, we have other regional subsidiaries where City of Burnside interests are well represented by elected members on East Waste, EHARM, Highbury Board, and I thank Councillor Lemon for clarifying again the position of elected members to ensure that there's no conflict of interest. I think that's very important. So I think I'd be happy for us to go down the track of continuing with the ballot as we resolved last time. In respect to the question that was asked, or the matter that was raised about 2 years ago when we made the appointment, Era Water was a totally different entity. We were joining in with, and we had debates, considerable debate with our fellow councils, partners and others at the time, and it was considered that there was representation from other councils, elected members, elected body on the board, and that we would go for an independent member. I think circumstances have significantly moved on since then, and I think for the reason I outlined, particularly that we need our interests represented and right up there in the board, an elected member is the best person to do that. So thanks.
Councillor Jones.
I think the problem with the motion that was passed 2 weeks ago was it was a bit like the Republic referendum, for those of you old enough to remember, in that we were asked to get rid of the monarchy, or in this case Jeff Vogt, and we're not actually told with what he will be replaced by. We're kind of trusting that we'll get something, but we don't know what it is. And there might be some people, say if it was Councillor Dawes, I might say he'd be a great replacement for Councillor Vogt. But if it was Councillor Carbone, I might say, you've got to be joking. I'd be bold, mate. So that's my worry.
I don't think you were being personally antagonistic.
We are forcing ourselves down a route of it must be an elected member. I would like to keep it open. If there was an elected member who thinks they could do a good job, I'm happy to consider that. But I'd also like that perhaps Jeff Vogt should be in the mix as well, because the fact is he has got a lot of commercial experience. He's got a lot of board experience. We're just moving into a commercialisation phase. I think he's done a reasonably good job of improving the board as it is. And so I'd like to see if Councillor Piggott or Councillor Hughes would like to nominate. I've got no problem with that. I would just like to keep it open to have Councillor Vogt as a, not Councillor Vogt, Mr Vogt, as a potential candidate for us to consider as well. And if we go down the route that we voted for 2 weeks ago, we're basically saying, no, you're gone. We're choosing someone who may not be any better. So that's my concern, and that's why I would support this motion.
I'm just going to state that, to be fair to Mr Vogt, every time there was a board meeting, I may be wrong, there might have been one he missed, but there was a one-page or half to one-page dot point report attached to every one of the Era Water Board meeting minutes that gave us feedback. And sometimes what was said in here was contradictory to what was in that report, and I was being criticised earlier for doing that. No, it's not a point of order unless you tell me what point of order in the Act it is that you are criticising me for.
You're influencing the debate.
No, I'm not influencing the debate at all. No, I'm not influencing the debate. I'm actually pointing out a correction from Councillor Piggott. No, not unless you can tell me what the legislation is that you are relating it to in terms of a point of order.
That's good. Right, so okay. I can't.
No. That is what is in the rules, and that is what I'm sticking to.
The presiding member cannot influence debate.
I was not influencing the debate. I was giving information. The information was factual. He gave us a report after every single board meeting. That is a fact. Now, Councillor Davies, you wish to speak, ask a question.
I do have a question. I can't recall the Chair, Brian Jenkins' background and qualifications. I don't have the report in front of me from the last meeting. Could I please have that clarified?
Can I call a point of order on that, relevance to the debate?
Again, I'm going to check. Have you got the number of the Act that you're quoting?
I'll clarify. I'm just asking for balance on the board. That was the reason for my wanting to know.
What do you mean by balance on the board?
He's an academic, I believe.
Perhaps the CEO.
Through the Mayor, I think it would be unfair of me to try and simply sum up a person's credentials in a couple of minutes. I'm happy to circulate his CV that he submitted when he was appointed as the chair, but I don't think it would do him any justice by me trying to summarise his qualifications or his experience, because I may do him a disservice.
Just for everybody else's information, how was he appointed? I do consider the question of relevance is a fair comment in terms of getting balance on the board, but I'm just trying to find out how, for everyone to know how he was appointed. You know, was it the board that selected him?
Through the Mayor, the process for appointing a chair is through the board itself. The board undertakes an expression of interest process, and a nomination is then made and provided to the constituent councils, and the constituent councils then have to sign off on that recommendation.
I don't have anyone on the screen at the moment. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak, or are you ready to have the motion put, or have you summarised?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you all for considering this rescission. And Jeff Vogt, as the Mayor said, does present reports after every meeting. And I've heard Councillors Piggott and Councillor Davis say that it's good to have an elected member on the board. Now, and it sounded like, why? Because it's, you know, be good, it's informal, they can have chats to us, give us information. Sounds very casual to me. I don't think that's very professional to have chats, especially if you're a board member. I believe that what Jeff Vogt does, writes a report, does write a report. every time, and in his report...
Then you quote the point
I can't, but I'm being
Right.
disrupted.
Let's take some time.
No, and you're not going to interrupt either.
Yes, you're right. Actually, it's not.
You are interrupting the speech. Please let her continue. No, do not. No, you do not have a point of order.
So,
Apparently you can, Councillor Piggott, draw a point of order if you are objecting to the words being used. I apologise. Okay.
I feel that to speak of what I described as casual and not professional is actually not fair.
Right, so you see that as a misinterpretation, and I will accept that as a misinterpretation.
It's not a misinterpretation, it's a misrepresentation.
All right, I accept it. Would you let me finish, not interrupt me, and I would have a chance to do so, Councillor Davis? Thank you. Would you please withdraw the comment that you made in relation to casual?
I withdraw the comment in relation to casual. So, just back to summarising, the board actually advertised and sought out an independent member. They required in their job advertisement an independent member to assist the board with a number of strategic plans and that included...
No, that's actually not correct.
Pardon? What?
No, you wouldn't like to be stopped if you were doing a summary. Can she do that? She can't. When you have already spoken, you cannot do that. We have a governance officer here checking the rules all the time, and that is what she has just told me. Right. Interruptions,
Okay.
but hopefully you can actually try to finish.
Yes, thank you. Yes. So, okay, look, in the last board meeting on the 10th of May, Jeff Vogt produced a quite succinct summary. The chairman has also been mentioned, and what I see happening in the context of the business operations is that there's a list of strategic issues, and it was agreed that they should be progressed in an orderly fashion in the coming months. If elected members read these strategic issues, they will find that the chair has written to the minister, and there are a number of very complex strategic issues that this water company faces. There are some significant risks, and one, for example, is the abstraction of groundwater by another third party. So legally, this water company is not protected. Its water resource is not protected. This is just one of many challenges this water company is facing. And I really do believe we need to have an independent member with the capabilities of someone like Mr. Jeff Vogt to add to the mix of the board. And it is quite clear that the best practice is for board members to continue for more than one term so that we have this continuity. So I do hope we can make the right decision here for the water company because it's really facing some tricky challenges ahead. Thank you.
Those in favour, please raise your hand. Those against? Motion is lost. Now we move to the secret ballot. 13.1. I haven't got anything on the agenda apart from that paragraph that is written there following the resolution. So now I seek nominations for this board position. Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd nominate Councillor Sarah Hughes.
Do you accept the nomination? Right. Are there any further nominations?
I'd like to nominate Councillor Piggott.
Councillor Piggott, you accept that nomination? Right. The picture from here is that each of those two people will remain in the room for the secret ballot. Oh, sorry. Are there any other nominations? I didn't see any hands or names on my screen, so I assume there were not. Okay. There are no other motions? Sorry, yeah, I'm going to get to, yeah. The two nominated people will have the opportunity to speak and explain why they should be selected. If you don't mind, I will stick to alphabetical. So that will be Councillor Hughes speaking first, and then Councillor Piggott. And you have no more than 5 minutes to speak. Then you will remain in the room for the actual secret ballot, and then you will need to leave the room when the vote is counted. Sorry, when the motion is put at the end of the ballot time. Apologies. They stay until we've done the counting. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they're allowed to vote for themselves. Yes. Of course. Yep. Councillor Hughes.
Okay, I will keep it short. For those of you who don't know, I currently work in the water industry as a consulting engineer. I've worked on the design of water harvesting and distribution projects, so I understand the talk. In my current role, I work obviously in the water industry, but working with clients as a consultant and work as a civil engineer. So the work that I do at the moment is mainly managing projects. So I manage scope, budget and forward planning for large projects for many different organisations around South Australia. So I have the ability to understand contractors, consultants and how that all fits, I guess, into one big picture on large scale projects. As you've probably seen over the last few months with Era Water coming to the table, I also have an interest and a passion and have asked many inquisitive questions around Era Water. I also believe that I'm a good communicator and have the ability to work well with others, which I think, given the current position that we're in with Era Water, will also play a big part. I guess, qualifications aside, ultimately, as Councillor Davis has mentioned, he actually stole some of my words, but I think being on the board is just, it's not about managing the day-to-day business, but it's really about looking at the strategy and the overall big picture. And I believe that this is something that I'd bring to the table and be asking the right questions. I also think that Councillor Piggott would do a tremendous job as well, so all the best. Thank you.
So much love in the room.
Councillor Piggott.
Well, actually, I will return the favour. Look, I suppose the concept initially probably was that Sarah is a very logical person to be our elected member on the board, and she is. And the only reason actually I've sort of muddied the waters a bit by putting myself forward is the fact that I think the key things from here on in actually are not so much water. Water is very relevant, and the skills around water and knowing the engineering of water are important, but I feel actually that the board and the organisation is reasonably strong in that already. And what I would bring to it would actually be the other parts of what is important, and that is the financial side of things. It's an organisation that's looking at a loss of nearly $1 million next year, or this year, and again next year. We are now down to the part almost of selling water, so actually commercialising what we have there. There's a political scope to it as well. I do feel that we do need a strong voice at the board to convey what this chamber feels, and we've got a report coming in July that could identify things that Burnside, from its position as an owner, would like the board to actually address, and I feel that perhaps I'm slightly better at being the person to do that. I don't bring any water expertise or experience, but I do bring quite a lot of experience of being on a subsidiary. I actually joined the East Waste subsidiary in 11, when it's a very dissimilar situation, but it was a situation where Burnside was out on one limb and the other member councils were the tree, and that had to be resolved and was. So I think that's what I bring. So you've actually got a stark choice, I feel, and which is good. What is it? What is it? Riches? Something of riches? But I think embarrassment of riches. Thank you. Hopefully, I'm not the embarrassment. But I do honestly feel I've been quite close to this the whole way along, and I actually do know it quite well, albeit the water bits I don't. But I think they are the important bits. So I'd be keen to do the job for you.
One name on the piece of paper, please. There's more to being in this position than planting trees.
Yeah, it's good. Thank you, members. We have confirmed that we have 13 votes, and I will read them out. First, we have one vote for Councillor Hughes. One vote for Councillor Piggott. You can vote for yourself. One vote for Councillor Hughes. One vote for Councillor Piggott. One vote for Councillor Hughes. 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 One vote for Councillor Piggott. And one vote for Councillor Hughes. So at the end of that, Councillor Hughes has 10 votes and Councillor Piggott has 3. So Councillor Hughes is the successful.
Councillor Hughes, you have to leave the room now.
Can we do it both together? Yep, so you can put both together. Yep. Councillor Piggott, can you leave the room as well?
And Councillor Piggott, would you leave the room as well, please? I would like to add a third amendment item to this list, and that is that we write to thank Mr Jeff Vogt for his role on the board representing Burnside for the last 2 years. Are you happy to accept that as an addition to this motion?
Someone has to.
We have to. Oh, did you? I didn't have anybody on here as actually having moved this.
So I moved 1 and 2, but I think your suggestion is excellent, so I'm happy to adopt it.
All right, thank you. So can you add that, Rob? Yeah. It's coming now, yeah. Right to... Yes. No, the council writes, not me. Yeah. I said we write. Of course. His service. And his contribution. Yeah. We'll go back and tidy that up in a minute. For the past 2 years. And then we just go back and take their, make it its. Before thanks. Right, it's thanks. And that would be coming from the CEO. Not me anyway. Right, do I have a second? Sorry, do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Davey, yes? You wish to second that?
Oh, I still had I was going to say something. In moving it.
Davis, I didn't allow you to speak to the motion.
Yeah, that's right. I just wanted to mention quickly the point 3, and I wanted to thank Mr. Vote for his service. In my view, the way that this has gone is certainly not a criticism of how he's handled himself. I think that he's done an excellent job, and when he's appeared at council, he's been very helpful. And the one pages that he's written on a regular basis to this council, I think, have been above and beyond of what would be expected of him, and I think he's done an excellent job there. In my view, the council is just going in a different direction as we move. In my view, the reason why I'm supporting this motion is that we are looking for representation or someone who's closer to us, that we can speak with them on a more frequent basis, I suppose, from that strategic level. But it's certainly not a motion of no confidence in him. So I hope he goes well, and I think that if the Mayor writes to him as well to express our thanks, that would be much appreciated.
Now, Councillor Davey.
Thank you.
Sorry, no, the microphone, I have to stick to what's on here. I will get back to you. You are seconding it, but unfortunately you're now the next on the list, so the mic won't work if I allow you to speak. So it's got to go to Councillor Dawes.
Yes, very well said, Councillor Davis. I do agree with every word. I didn't realise that when we were voting for both the member and the deputy member. I thought we were just voting for the member, and then there would be another election for deputy members. So it's a question, probably the CEO here. I didn't understand that.
I guess that's something that we've just taken for granted, that that's the way we've operated without an explanation.
We've taken a ballot, and that's why I'm voting.
Do you have a problem? It's happened now. Yeah. We can't do anything else now. The motion is here. It's on the table. We have it's seconded already, so that's what we will be doing for the next 2 years. So, Councillor Davey, you need to speak.
Thank you. Yes, I endorse those comments, and I thank you for that third point. I think this vote is no reflection on Mr. Vote. He's given us a very good contribution through some difficult times. It's acknowledged that we've had some ups and downs. The Era Water Board has had some ups and downs and some challenges in its first couple of years. I think it's stabilised now. We've still got lots of challenges to address. I think as Councillor Piggott outlined well, and but we need. I think we're all agreed that we need elected member representation from Burnside on the board. So I'm very happy to commend this to you and hope you support it.
I don't have anyone else on my list here, so are you ready for me to put the motion? Right, those in favour, please raise your hands. Sorry, those against? Carried. And those who voted in favour, please stand. Now remember to go slowly. Called the division, it was Councillor Davey, Councillor Lemon, Councillor Carbone, Councillor Jones, I was told to go slower this time, Councillor Hubel, Councillor Cornish, Councillor Davey and Councillor Davis. And those against, Councillor Turnbull, Councillor Dawes, Councillor Henschke. That's it. Motion was carried. Councillor Lem, would you mind asking if the other two would come back in? Thank you. Since you're closest. Yeah, you did know the outcome, but well, we added an extra item to the motion in relation to writing to Mr. Vogt to thank him, so it took us a little longer. All right, so now we can move on to the next item on the agenda, which is questions without notice. Now, I believe there is a question without notice from Councillor Henschke that is on the screen now. And there is an answer, I believe, from either Mr. Cooper or it's Mr. Cooper. So that's you. Are you going to speak? Sorry? Oh, we have to ask the question and you need to read it aloud first.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Can the council staff please report and advise on any intentions to undertake a wide area traffic management review for those local government roads bound by Greenhill, Kensington, Portrush and Fullerton roads? The question is being asked because I have received a copy of a petition to be provided to the council. I had a meeting with residents and have been informed they are opposed to the council's current intentions for traffic calming infrastructure in Grandview Grove. I have been advised that the residents will be formally requesting from council a more complete, thorough analysis and complete consultation during any further research and analysis prior to any concept being determined.
And we have an answer from General Manager Mr. Cooper.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, I'd like to address two elements in that question on without notice, sorry. The first part, by way of background, over the last few years, the residents of Grandview Grove have previously raised a number of safety and amenity issues with Council in relation to the speed and volume of cut-through traffic. To explore solutions to this issue, Council sought community input on improving the safety of Grandview Grove in December 2018. Council sought information on how the current issues affected residents, any remedies that residents would find acceptable. 4 options were proposed by our traffic team. Firstly, a driveway link. Secondly, angled slow points. Thirdly, a pavement bar, medians, or road humps. The engagement was sent to 80 resident and non-resident ratepayers. 43 responses were received, 36 were in favour of progressing, 7 against. Therefore, 84% were in favour of Council undertaking traffic calming measures along the street, with the majority of support being for either angled slow points or a driveway link to be installed. During the second stage of the engagement, which was communicated to both ward councillors, that closed on Friday the 24th of May. 38 responses were received, 34 against, 3 in favour and 1 other. The associated engagement report that's always produced at the conclusion of the engagement has only just been finalised today, but I can advise that the results of the second round of engagement, as a result of the second round of engagement, we will not be proceeding further other than to advise those residents of the outcome, including the response to the comments and suggestions that were received. As such, there is no intention to install traffic calming infrastructure, particularly as the 85th percentile speed is 46 kilometres an hour, and therefore there are no issues with that. With regards to undertaking a wider traffic survey for the area, there are currently no plans, and we would question the cost-benefit potential. If there was a push for a broader traffic study, we believe that we would need to consider outsourcing it to a consultancy due to the required resources that would be required and the traffic modelling. This would potentially be an expensive undertaking. Consideration is also needed to be given to the potential impact on the area from both the Glenside and Burnside village developments, i.e. there would be limited benefit of a study until these developments are completed and traffic patterns stabilise. Thank you.
Councillor Davey,
I just have a question. Is there a report coming to council on this, or is this preemptive, or I don't understand why the question's been asked. Is this a routine matter that was undertaken?
Yes,
Thank
through
you.
the Mayor, that is correct.
Let's just move on.
Thank you. Councillor Henschke, if you wish this to be minuted, you will have to move a motion as such. Otherwise, you've had the question's been asked, you've been given the response, so it doesn't need to go any further. But it's your choice.
Thank you, Mayor. This isn't really quite routine, as Councillor...
You can't speak to it.
I can't speak to it,
You can only
okay.
speak if you are raising a motion.
Yeah, I'm raising a motion to have this minuted. The motion is to...
In order to have...
Yeah.
The motion is purely to have this response included in the minutes, so you don't have to talk about the why or anything. It's
Fine.
just
Thank you.
justify to have it or to have it included in the minutes so that it is recorded.
Thank you.
Okay.
I, Councillor Henschke, move that the question without notice and the response be minuted, please.
Do we have a seconder, please?
Yep.
Okay, Councillor Cornish, you happy with that? Do you wish to speak?
No.
So, are you happy just to go to put the motion now? Yeah. Okay, I'll put the motion. Those in favour, please raise your hands. Those against? Right, it's carried.
Okay.
All right, now we move on to motions without notice and... Oh, sorry, Councillor Piggott.
Could I ask a question without notice, please?
I would... Yes, go on.
Look, I just...
I was aware of that one in advance, so I had been previously provided with that was coming, but go ahead.
So are we on questions without notice or questions with notice?
Questions without notice.
Right. It came to my attention just tonight that the columns within focus of Councillor Cornish and myself were mixed up. He's claiming credit for my excellent words, and I've been saddled with his.
So what's your question?
My question is, what strategies does administration have to inform residents that those two are mixed up?
Might I make a suggestion that something needs to go on the council website as a starting point? To acknowledge that, would you be happy with that as a starting point, Councillor Piggott and Councillor Cornish?
The PDF should be...
Thank you. Through the Mayor. Firstly, apologies to both councillors involved. This has only been brought to my attention this evening. I'm not quite sure how that mistake has happened, but we will thoroughly investigate, and if I could take your question on notice, we'll get back with how best that we will address that.
And perhaps to Councillor Cornish as well. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. Okay, so now we move to motions.
My question without notice is, I know that there's a Focus magazine that's actually published online. Is there a chance of swapping them over in the online version?
Through the Mayor, absolutely, and if we are able to do that, yes, we will do that.
This isn't, yes, because after all, this is just an article in a newsletter rather than the maternity ward.
Correct.
Thank you. Okay, motions without notice. I haven't received anything in advance, so there are none. Reports of officers. We are moving now down to the community grants. Well, this one is actually carried over from last time, and poor Ms Portelli sat through the entire meeting last time waiting for it to happen, and it didn't. So I would like to do this one first and then go through all the remaining ones, because we already have somebody who has withdrawn this motion from the last meeting, and that was Councillor Lemon. So I'm going to give Councillor Lemon the opportunity to speak first, and then obviously seeking a seconder.
Thank you. Thank you, and let me begin by apologising to you for spending all your time at the last meeting and not being able to sit in that chair to give us advice, and I'm very sorry that happened to you. I move this motion. I move the officer's recommendation with 2 additions, and the additions are currently going on, but I'll read them out for you. So addition number 1 is that the policies for community grants, placemaking grants and other grant funding programs are presented to Council for review at its 28th October 2019 meeting. Second one is that a workshop about these grant policy documents is conducted prior to 28 October, if possible in early October. And I'll speak to my amendment and I'll speak to the motion. When I first read these grants, we've had a grant program ever since I've been on council, so since 2010. And when I first read the ones that had been awarded this time, I found a couple of them pretty challenging. And I'll speak about the ones I found challenging. The first one I found challenging was in the minor grants, and that was for Glenunga International High School, where we're awarding them $1,000 to conduct a program with a school in the Philippines about waste and want, really. And I considered it odd that we would award money to a high school because they're actually funded by federal and state governments. And this high school has just recently been given $29 million by our current state government to extend and include Year 7s in the next few years. And they don't pay rates. Did I mention they don't pay rates? So I thought, okay, let's look at the policy. So I had a look at the policy and I saw that schools was in it. And it was a bit of a bonus that I didn't get a chance to talk about this a fortnight ago, because it's given me a fortnight to do some thinking and some investigating on it. Schools is in the policy, and I think schools should be in the policy because there's another grant in here to the Probus Club, which is actually teaching school children public speaking, and I think that's a fantastic use of our community grants money. I had the opportunity last week to go to a historical society event where the Burnside primary school Year 7 students had done a project on history in the Burnside area, and again, that's a brilliant way of using some of our grant money, and they did a sensational job on looking at things in the Burnside area and doing projects on our history. And I thought, yeah, this is great, and this is the sort of stuff that should be funded. I went back to have a look at the actual applications themselves. I went and got copies of them. When you look at the outcome that Glenunga High School says, it's the International Mindedness Secretariat of the Council of the Glenunga High School. And it plans to keep in close communication with the Filipino community. Fine stuff, got no problems with that. Our initial plans are to establish a sustainable garden in our school and initiate action plans to promote sustainability in both Glenunga and the outer community. And that's the only reference that's made. There's nothing else in this submission about how this is going to happen. So I don't see a lot of benefit, given the catchment area for that school is as much in Unley as it is in Burnside. I don't see a lot of benefit from our community in that. The other is the Burnside Hospital. Oh, well, I actually won't go, but I'll do that when I sum up. So I see that our elected members on this board did the best job they could, given that they used the policies that we've got. And it's not the decisions that I should be worried about. It's the policy that's allowed those decisions to be made. And that's the reason why I'd like them to come back to this council. I want us to really think about, where do we give our money? Who do we give our money to? What sort of outcomes do we want? These policies have been updated over a period of time, and they've rolled from year to year to year, as has the placemaking policy, and I'll talk about that when I sum up. What hasn't happened is we don't have an overarching strategy for Burnside as a whole, from which these policies can actually fall from. And I think that by doing this in October, I'm hoping that we'll be down the path of actually doing something about an overarching policy, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to look at this and say, yes, we will have schools, but these are the criteria for it, and we won't have this sort of thing happening again. So I hope you support my addition to this.
Thank you. Councillor Turnbull.
Following on from that, thank you, Mayor. Following on from that, I had trouble...
Wait, slow down. We need a seconder first. Do you wish to second this?
I'll second it.
You're supporting it? Okay.
I'll speak. Right, I had a bit of trouble with Glenunga Tennis Club getting a minor grant, seeing that during the last year, they seem to have had an inordinate amount of money spent on them, generous financial help to help build their clubhouse, an extra 25-year lease. So feedback that also on page 28, the report states that priority will be given to the distribution of funds fairly across the city. I'm having a bit of trouble with that. I think that Glenunga Tennis Club's had quite an amount, and it's time to spread it round. Feedback from other clubs is that perhaps the council could provide a calendar in the form of a spreadsheet of all the council grants available for the financial year, published on the website, in order that the dates when they begin, the dates when submissions are due, is there for everybody. Then the whole process would be much more open and equitable. I also have a little bit of problem with the dates. On page 28, under Community Funding, 6.2, it says the following round will open in March for the following financial year. But the last one, on page 14, under 3.1, it said in the 2019-2020 community grants were launched on January the 7th. My question is, why the discrepancy in the dates? One said March, one said January. When most local clubs, like most of Adelaide, are in recess in early January, most clubs don't start back till late January, early February. And I've heard club managers say that the timing was very poor and they had little time to consult with other members in order to put in a submission. So those are my two things, the dates and plus the fact that it really needs to be spread around, distribution of funds. Thank you.
May I just ask Ms Patelli to respond to a couple of those questions that were raised?
Sorry, Councillor Turnbull, could you just reference the second point? It was 3.1 and what was the other one?
Page 28, it said the following round will open in March for the following financial year.
What point number was that? Sorry.
6.2.1.2.
If he turns it off, will he get back?
I can yell. 6.2.1.2. That said March.
I can't find the second one, sorry.
So it's on page 28 on the paper copy.
Oh, the policy, I'm sorry.
On the paper copy, page 28. .1.2. So it says March, okay?
Yeah,
on page 14 it says
yes.
It opened on January the 7th.
Yes, we did open in, sorry, through the chair, we did open in January and closed at the end of March.
Might I put in a request that that's changed because early January is not good for most clubs.
Sure, we were trying to align it to the financial year because the grants are I guess, adopted in advance of the financial year so that budget allocation can be made in the following financial year. So sufficient time is needed to allow applicants to put in applications, to go through the assessment process, so we adopt prior to or have a recommendation in preparation for the budget process and adoption in around June each year. So we need at least 6 months lead-in time, but we could take on some of that recommendation and maybe promote earlier in the year or later in the previous year.
Can I ask the administration if I have to put in a motion to to ask for a spreadsheet of all council grants, so it's all open and transparent on the website for all clubs to know about.
Through the chair, we can do that. All the grants are available on our website. They are promoted through there.
In order, so it's all there in one spreadsheet, so that any club
Sure,
can
we
go to it and
can.
see.
Yeah, we can certainly improve, make a one-stop shop for all of that, if you like. Yeah, that's not a problem.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Councillor Carbone.
Thank you, Worship. I'm actually glad that this has come forward like this for review, because I did sit on the panel, and as you may recall, I did have a beef with one particular component of the policy, and that was that there's no onus on these groups to acknowledge in any way, shape or form the City of Burnside in receiving grants. So I think that needs to be changed, because apart from us and obviously the presidents of these groups and so forth, no one would know that we're giving away $80,000 of community money to these groups. So I think that certainly needs to be changed. And I think that would probably help as well in re-evaluating who gets the money and so forth, because you've got some groups who come up with a innovative marketing campaign that they can explain how they got the funding and so forth, and how thankful they are to the City of Burnside. That might have a heavier weighting than a group that just can't do those sort of things. So we're giving away community money, and I think the community has a right to know and should know by these groups as many times as possible.
Councillor Turnbull, do you still want to ask another question, or?
Oh no, I'm sorry.
Okay. Councillor Henschke.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I'd like to make a comment. I was also on the committee, and the pattern that I noticed was that the regulars that were applying for grants, and even people out of the City of Burnside applying for grants. So the problem is raising awareness, like Councillor Carbone has mentioned. And look, perhaps when we do our communication strategy, I think that's another motion on notice, report coming through about how we communicate on social media. I mean, could that also include when we send out our bills for council rates, like SA Water does, they also have little flyers slipped in there, so that when someone goes to pay their bill, they go, oh, what's this flyer about? Oh, there are grant money. And quite often I have spoken to residents and they've said, oh, we weren't aware that there's grant money, and they've got all these creative ideas and people and the family and so forth. So I do think that raising awareness is step number one. So the question is it possible to do something like that? Put little flyers in, and it's an extra cost, but we'd have to look at all the options and weigh it up.
Through the Mayor? Yes, it is possible, but obviously there is a cost to doing that, and we are conscious also of a number of messages that incorporate in those rates notices as well. So if you're happy for us to look into that, something we can get back to you on. Take it as on notice. Yeah.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you. I had a question which was raised by Councillor Carbone in terms of an interesting point about acknowledging council funding. Do we do this anywhere? Do we, when we give funding to sporting clubs and lots of bodies throughout council, are they required, or is anyone who accepts our funding required to acknowledge it or publicise it?
Through the Mayor, I think it's a case-by-case basis, but there's no overarching policy that says that any club or organisation that receives funding from the council has to have some sort of symbolic statement that says it's contributed by the City of Burnside, and I think that's a valuable point to take on board and incorporate it in any policy review.
Councillor Cornish.
Thank you, Mayor Monso. I've just got a question to the administration. Up there is a October deadline. I note that we've got two current reports at the moment that are basically seeking additional time because the administration is under some pressure. I understand that we've had a staff member come to 2 council meetings, and that's time we've stolen away from her engaging with our residents and our ratepayers to answer our questions. Is an October deadline, is that too far away, or do you need more time for this? Would it be better to extend it?
Through the chair, October's reasonable. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay. I to draw attention to one other issue that we raised during the committee meeting, and that is that currently the rules state that once a club applies for something, they can't apply for the same thing again. And I think that we raised as an issue as well, because there are some, like Burnside Historical Society always ask for the money for their newsletter. The Probers Club always ask for the money to help with the run the public speaking competition. So for them to come up with an alternative is actually not, in many ways is not something that they could do very practicably. I do take on board the point that was made by Councillor Turnbull about fairness and equity, but we have to respond to those people who apply. And as a group of, and there were 5 of us, largest we've ever had on the community grants, we really analysed every application, considered every point of view, but we can only provide money to those people who actually apply, and there were some that we refused. There were also some that we went back for additional information and asked for them to provide us with that prior to us actually, via emails, agreeing to some changes and to those submissions. So we have tried to be fair and equitable, but we can only do those who actually apply. And your point about spreading the word and getting it out is really important. The other thing from my role, when I go to many of these clubs, and I've spoken to many of them, they are very, very appreciative and always say how much they appreciate. And a number of them do have these things printed in their publications and on their newsletters and things where they state that this money has been provided by the City of Burnside. But it is not mandated, and I take the point. I think it was a good idea. So, Councillor Davey, you wish to speak?
I just have another question. Thank you, Mayor Monso. In the past, I can't recall seeing this in the report. In the past, we've had a reception for all our recipients, and are we having one of those this year? Oh, thank you.
Can I just add that it's had to be moved to later in the year because of this late funding decision, as well as that the Community Connections want to make it a joint function with the Mayor's Photographic Award competition results as well. So that's going to be celebrated on the same night with the community grants. I'm right about that?
Correct, and the placemaking grants and the participatory budgeting grants. So it's one big grant awards evening.
Goes back to Councillor Lemon.
Thank you. So I'll go to the second part of what I was saying, which actually covered the placemaking grants, and you'll see that in my my amendment I've got and other grant funding programs, because I couldn't in a hurry find all the others. So I'm hoping that that's a catch-all for those other grant funding programs. And the reason I've put, the reason I've put them in there is that we got an info doc the other day on placemaking, and again, I was struck by the, no offence, by the fact that the way we're giving placemaking grants is that we're actually saying to 6 saxophonists in Ferguson Square, have some money and play the saxophone every other Saturday, and we're saying to someone that wants to yarn bomb a tree in Glenunga, there you go, buy some coloured wool and you can yarn bomb, and there's no cohesiveness in what the city's going to look like, and I'm worried that it's going to look like a pretty awful patchwork quilt if we continue down that path. So again, it gets back to, where's our overarching strategy? Why don't we theme these, the placemaking? If we're going to theme it with music, let's theme it with music. If we're going to theme it with fabric, let's theme it with fabric. Let's placemake in a theme if we're going to do that on an annual basis, which takes me back to the points that you made. And what I got from this was, you're looking at raising awareness, you're looking at marketing the grants in a better way, you're looking at equitable distribution, you're looking at the fact that Burnside needs to be acknowledged, and we need to look at how we're going to acknowledge Burnside, and we're looking at how the policies actually work in terms of reapplying. A lot of people are worthy of grants. Councillor Turnbull sent an email to all of us this week saying, why don't we have Arbor Day? And if we're looking at Greening Adelaide, there's a grant, but how do you actually get somebody to submit for that? Yeah, you said it to me too. Amazing. So that's the point of this. The point of this is it's not supposed to be making work hard for administration. The point of this is we're going to have a workshop on what the policy looks like now, whether it meets our needs, what the gaps that we see in these policies currently exist, like not acknowledging Burnside, like let's make it easy for small organisations that don't have the resources to apply for grants, Let's look at how we're actually going to let people know that grants are available for really small organisations, because they're the ones that we want to actually give our grant money to. We don't, I would imagine, and I'm hoping I'm speaking for all of you, we don't want to give our grant money to people that are just really good at applying for grant money. We want to give it to people that are actually going to really make a difference in the community. So I hope you support this. I hope we can get this working in a better sort of way. I hope we can get the marketing better. But I actually think the 12 of us sitting down at a workshop, looking at what might be potential, and then maybe bringing it back to council in the form of a new policy document or several new policy documents, might work a lot better than just calling for a report and having that come back. I actually think that we've got an investment in this, and we need to make that investment by having a workshop, putting our thinking caps on, and coming up with something better than what we've got. I thank the committee for what they've done. They were bound by the policies that we've got now. So these funding applications have gone through. I'm not happy with some of them. Other people are also not happy with others of them. But we must respect that the decision was made, so I'm happy for this to go through, but I'd like us to look at it again, and I hope you support this.
Those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. Thank you, Ms Patelli. Right, now we move to the list, and I'm going to ask for anyone who wishes to withdraw any of these reports from officers. So 13.3, Communications and Marketing, Lemon. Lost and Found? No one? Oh, sorry. Okay. Councillor Cornish is moving that the Lost and Found Policy Review is accepted. Councillor Davies seconded. Those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. The third quarter budget update, 13.5. You wish to move it? Right. Anyone seconding? Thank you. Is that Councillor Davis? Sorry, I didn't hear. Or Piggott? Councillor Piggott, sorry. Councillor Piggott seconded. Those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. Regional subsidiaries, budget review update and draft Eastern Health Authority annual business plan and budget. Anyone wishes to withdraw that? No. Councillor Cornish is moving it again. And Councillor Hughes is seconding. Those in favour, please raise your hands. Those against? Carried unanimously. Appointment of independent members to the Council Assessment Panel. Councillor Lemon, you wish to withdraw that one. Review of parking restrictions in Rose Park and Dulwich, 13.8. Councillor Henschke. Right, we'll go back to the first one, which is Councillor Lemon.
Thank you.
Page 33.
Part 2 of the officer's recommendation says that this is essentially a holding report to enable consultation with elected members regarding any possible future changes to the communication and community engagement strategy. And my question is to the administration through you, Mayor. I'm taking that that's going to be a workshop for elected members, and can you give us a date on when that might be taking place?
Through the Mayor, no, I can't at this point in time. The draft report that has been presented for consideration prior to being presented to the Council anticipates a potential revocation of the communication and community engagement strategy and replaced with a plan. So I would like to facilitate a workshop with elected members in the first instance. So that will be within the next couple of weeks.
So I have another question, if I may. Given that you're going to actually do that, through you, Mayor, again, that concerns me in the sense that if we don't have the beginnings of a whole of Burnside plan, I fear that we risk being bitsy in our policies and strategies. So is this new strategy, it'll come to a workshop before it becomes to a new, so we'll get a chance to talk about it amongst ourselves, as it were.
Through the Mayor, yes, there's a draft plan already in place, so that is what you will be discussing at a workshop.
A draft plan isn't in place now?
No, at the moment we have a communications and community engagement strategy, and the report that is anticipated to be presented to you seeks to revoke that and replace it with a plan. So prior to presenting that to Council, we anticipate that that draft plan, which replaces the strategy, will be debated or discussed at a workshop.
In that case, I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation, and I look forward to seeing the strategy and the plan prior to the strategy, the draft plan, and I hope you support this. Thank you.
Yeah, this was an interim measure really because there was a deadline that had to be met by administration, and so it wasn't ready to the satisfaction of the CEO. So, yeah. Okay, Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I'm happy to second this. I don't have any comments other than to ask, because I think Councillor Lemon, thank you, clarified the direction that we're taking, and I'm very pleased that we'll be workshopping this because I think it's very important. My question relates to, with the recent election that we've just had, that turned on its head the whole way we seem to, as have some other factors recently, the way we do market research and polling and all of that sort of thing. So I wonder, is there any work being done to look at how we do any of that research differently? And will that necessitate any change in that approach?
Through the Mayor, no, that's okay. It's a good question. Unfortunately, I don't have the answer to that at the moment. Obviously, the biggest vehicle is our annual community survey that goes out, and that's obviously done on a statistical basis in terms of making sure it's a valid representation of the feedback that we get. But look, happy to take it forward and bring it back, I think, during that workshop. That's probably the best time to have that discussion with some ideas around that.
I don't have anyone else on the screen, so Councillor Lemon, back to you. Put it? Okay. So those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. The next one is Councillor Lemon again, 13.7, appointment of independent members to the Council Assessment Panel.
Thank you. Now, there are some members in the chamber. Members of the chamber who spoke so eloquently for keeping Era Water as it was. Remember what you said and why you said it. For I'm now going to attempt to be as eloquent in terms of keeping CAP as it is. So I move that the report be received and that Council reappoints, and in fact it's paragraph 30, option 1. And I don't want to go to option 2 at all. I think if any of them say no, we come back to it. And then point 3 is for a period, or to add to the end of that, commencing for a further 1 year period, commencing 2nd of October. For a 1 year period.
Can we leave, just a suggestion, can we leave number 4 out at this stage and just move 1 to 3? Because the others require another vote for people to be on a committee.
Yes, I know, I don't want to do that.
Okay. So I was just clarifying with the person doing the minutes.
So it's option 1
and 2
for a 1 year period.
Right, that's what, you're happy with that, 1 and 2, Councillor Lemon?
Yes.
Okay.
And I don't want that the following be undertaken. So it's just, number 2 finishes at member. And we can, it'll come back to us and we'll if that's the case, it'll come back here and we can put a selection panel
No, I just want to
together
make
if
sure
one of them
what
can't
you
do
wanted
it.
there.
The reason I say that is that while under any other circumstances, I would actually say, yes, I think we need to go to an open tender process for our council assessment panel because they've been there for a while. But the reason I want to keep them is because they've been there for a while, and I'll tell you why. As of the 1st of July this year, there's going to be the start of the new planning legislation that's going to be rolled out across the state. And they're still working it out now about what it's going to look like and how it's going to affect us. And we don't know what trip-ups there are in this legislation as it gets rolled out. We don't know what it's going to do for us. Nobody sitting in this chamber could be taken into a darkened room with the legislation and work that out. But those 4 independent members that sit in our community assessment panel probably know it in their sleep. They will see what's being rolled out and they will instantaneously get, because they know our current development plan backwards and forwards and they deal with it all the time and have done for some time, they'll instantly get how this rollout's going to affect us. And for that reason only, I think we need to keep them for another year. I think we need to keep them because they know the business of Burnside's planning really, really well. And I think for us to go to open tender, which we could if it was 10 years ago and if it's 10 years hence. But right now, at this particular point in time, with all the stuff that's happening with the state government and the new planning legislation, I actually think going for something new, bright and shiny could actually also be sharp and we'll end up with bleeding fingers. I don't want to go down that path. I want to keep what we've got. We know they're good. We know they know their stuff. We'll keep them for another 12 months and we can review it then, because by then we'll get a real sense of how the new legislation is actually going to impact our city. So I hope you support that. I'm being pragmatic and also opportunistic. I want them to earn their money and I want them to come and tell us. We can invite the chair, who's highly regarded, to come and give us a bit of an update come December or February next year about how this has affected us. So I hope you support rolling them. I know that you probably don't, you don't really want to go down that path. I think it would be imprudent not to keep them while we can.
I apologise for a few moments of what might have appeared to be inattention, but it wasn't meant to be. But it's just that there does need to be a declaration of conflict of interest. Oh. And I wanted you to be able to finish your speech first before that had to be interrupted. And that's going to be before Councillor Davey, I assume, is seconding, all right, because I do want to allow Councillor Henschke to declare her conflict and then leave the room.
Thank you, Mayor. I declare a conflict of interest as I'm a current member of the panel, a perceived conflict of interest, as I'm a current member of the panel, Council Assessment Panel, and I propose to leave the room.
Now, Councillor Davey, you may speak.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. I thank Councillor Lemon for her motion. I think this is a very, as she said, pragmatic and practical way to manage what is going to be a big change to our planning and development area. I've actually done a bit of research and identified that 2 of the current members on the board, the chair and one of the members, have actually been on the board for 6 years. So it is a long time. We've had some new blood as well with the others. But so ordinarily I would be asking that we overturn, that we, go out for recruitment and recruit a new, have them apply again. But I think under the circumstances and with the changes that are coming up, I think this is the best alternative. So I hope you'll support this.
Councillor Cornish.
Thank you, Ma'am. I'm sorry, I've just got a few questions of the administration if I can, and it's in regards to, I suppose, the time of 1 year, because my understanding is that for Burnside, the actual overlays and the new plan will actually be rolling out from 1 January 2020? Not 1 January, 1 July 2020, is that correct? And so you were effective, the next question is, I suppose, were you putting 2 years to actually give us a little bit of leadway for that new system to actually settle in, and that's why you proposed a 2-year extension for everyone?
Through the chair, the 2 years was probably more because that's customary. Since the DAPs have been in and now the CAPs, the council was ordinarily appointed independent members for 2 years, which is the maximum term before being reappointed, and the elected member for 1 year. So we're adopting a consistent approach having regard to the past.
Okay. Well, if that's the case, I'm happy to support the motion as it stands. I think we'll probably get a good sense of how the department is actually running out this mammoth task of new development policies and procedures and planning for the whole state within a year, and we'll have the ability to reappoint for another 12-month period then if we so feel that it's necessary to do so to bed down the new processes with a consistent body that actually understands a little bit about the process. So I will support the motion as it stands.
Councillor Dawes.
It's a question of Magnus, and I will support Councillor Lemon's motion. The question is that there are 4 independent members, and I'm thinking of corporate knowledge, and so I guess after 1 more year we seek expressions of interest. But can we appoint 2 at a time? So there's 2 that are retiring every 2 years. Is that been done before? Because I know back in 2017 the expressions of interest were for all positions.
Through the chair, certainly staggering membership is something that's possible. Other councils, I think, do that. We traditionally haven't, but that's not to say that it's not a good idea. I guess a potential option would be to appoint 2 for 1 year and 2 for 2 years, but I don't want to. You can do that.
Councillor Davis.
Yeah, I was just going to say, in terms of time as well, like staff time and the time it takes to go out and it's a large process to go through these selection panels. So if it can be done quickly together, I understand the overlapping thing, but I've seen in years where the applicants, there's been a limited amount of them who fit all the criteria. So if you go at it all in one blast, sometimes it can be better. So it goes either way.
Don't have anyone else on the screen. Do you wish to sum up then, Councillor Lemon?
Yes, I think I've made my views clear about the rationale behind this, and I hope you support it.
Right, those in favour, please raise your hands. Right, those against? Carried unanimously. Would someone like to move a motion for a break at this point in time? Councillor Davis? I'm just asking your advice. We have got a few more to go, and the reports. I think it's necessary. Well, it's your call. Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Moved and seconded, Councillor Hubel. Those in favour, please raise your hands. Right. Those against, carried, but not. Have a 10-minute break and resume in 10 minutes.
sorry, where are pages? Sorry, what page?
143.
Thank you. Right. Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, this is a good report. There's been a lot of engagement, and as we know, the more we engage, the better we perform. Residents are pleased, they've been engaged with, problems are being fully defined, and once we know what the problems are... You need to read them. Oh, sorry. My apologies, sorry. I, Councillor Henschke, move that the report be received, that the report relating to Council Resolution C12033 as described in the body of this report be presented to Council in November 2019 to allow for the administration to continue to build on the work undertaken to date, engage further with the community and plan next phases as appropriate. 3, that Council approves a 12-month trial to convert existing all-day parking restrictions along the Eastern Fullerton Service Road to only apply during normal business hours, Monday to Friday, 8:30am to 5pm. So I'll just speak to the motion. I've also got a question for the administration. As I said, pleased the residents are going to be engaged with. So, no. Question? Okay, so the question is the idea under 3 that the Council approves a 12-month trial to convert the business, the parking for the businesses along Fullerton Service Road. The question is, has the administration engaged with the businesses along the Fullerton Service Road regarding this change?
Through the chair, no. We saw this change as being it's a simple change to make that's not going to impact on anyone other than in a positive sense. So the businesses along there really only require that they won't be affected by us taking it away on weekends, and in fact what it's really doing is taking pressure off some of the other residential streets when there are big events on in Victoria Park. So if that restrictions taken away on weekends, that provides, I think it's about 26 or 30 parks for revellers and people using Victoria Park to use unencumbered. Having said that, we will be engaging in a process to liaise with the businesses about their experiences. So that'll be something we do over the next few months before reporting back to Council in November.
Thank you. Thank you. So nothing much more to say, but the residents really want to stay engaged with this. It's a historic conservation zone. It's a busy arterial with businesses that thrive. And when I drive along Fullerton Road on a Sunday, it's a ghost town. So there are a lot of employees parking along the Fullerton Service Road. A lot of employees parking up those side streets. People have different work hours these days. They might work for 2 or 3 hours in the afternoon, casual part-time people, but there's a lot of car shuffling going on. So this next stage is very promising, and my co-councillor, Councillor Peter Cornish, and myself are talking to the residents. They're talking to the administration. And we even need to talk to the Adelaide City Council because there's ramifications when they make changes. And as we've put all our heads together, we can come up with some really good ideas so that we protect the amenity for residents and help businesses and commuters. There might be a good solution for the commuters that have their bicycles on the back of their cars. Perhaps there needs to be a park and ride somewhere. I don't know. But all in all, thank you for everyone's efforts. The administration's been very busy working with the community, and I thank them for having all the meetings.
Seconded by Councillor Cornish.
Yes.
Oh, just microphone off.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I concur with everything that Councillor Henschke has just said. The administration has been working very well with various groups within the local communities down there to address this situation. This is basically a holding report because once meeting those residents and groups of residents, quite a lot of ideas have popped up and needed a bit more time than a couple of weeks to actually put a report together. So I'm fully supportive of this motion. As you can see, there is no one in the gallery to complain about it, which is always a good sign when it comes to vexed parking issues. So please support the motion as it stands. The administration has been communicating very effectively with the groups that have raised issues with this, with the trial of parking restrictions. I fully commend this motion to the chamber.
Right, I have no one else on here, so can we go back to Councillor Henschke? Do you have any more to say, or can I put the motion? Put the motion. Right. Thank you. Those who are in favour, please raise your hands. Those against, carried unanimously. We move on to subsidiaries, regional subsidiaries. Thank you, Mr. Heinrich. Eastern Waste Management Authority, I need a mover and a seconder to recommend the received report. Councillor Piggott, seconded by Councillor Cornish. Thank you. Those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. Eastern Health Authority.
I'd like to move and I'd like to speak to
yes,
it if I can.
That's fine. You did preempt me about that.
I did. Listen, I just wanted to highlight a few of the outcomes in this report for everyone in the chamber in terms of what's occurred in the last 3 months for the city of Burnside. So 225 Burnside residents have received 451 vaccinations from EHA nurses at 36 conveniently located clinics, where they were open for 78 hours, those clinics were, with 5 of them being in afternoons and evening times for extra convenience for working families. I've also asked because obviously there's been a bit of an outbreak, I've asked EHA to give me more recent progress because obviously the report goes to the end of March. And in April, there were an additional 161 clients, so almost what we've had in those 3 months, receiving 232 vaccinations. And I understand in May, 101 City of Burnside employees received the influenza vaccine as well. Also in the 3 months, 74 food premises within the City of Burnside were inspected, 47 of them on a routine basis, with higher risk and poor performing premises inspected on a more frequent basis. 3 of the 74 food inspections were due to complaints from members of the public, and 23 of the inspections were follow-up inspections to ensure non-compliances were addressed. This accounts for many of the time to inspect food premises, prepare reports and follow up on outstanding non-conformances to ensure these businesses are meeting their food safety standards. During the reporting period, only 1 improvement notice was issued. 3 food safety audits were performed on premises that provide services to vulnerable population. They were conducted, so they're groups like Meals on Wheels, those sort of kitchen sort of places that deliver those sort of meals. So 3 of them were done. Auditors there are required to provide an audit for food businesses with a food safety plan and prepare audits and compile reports and prepare routine inspections and they are significantly longer to inspect. 2 inspections of a hairdresser within the City of Burnside were conducted after a complaint was received. As discussed at the board, public health risks associated with beauty therapists has been historically low, but however, the introduction of more complex and high-risk beauty techniques such as permanent makeup, laser body therapy and body piercing is increasing the public risk, with some in other areas actually breaking out with very bad skin rashes in some other areas due to bad techniques in some beauty salons, so be prepared. We have also done a Legionella testing in 1 water tower within the City of Burnside, and 2 wastewater applications were also assessed within the City of Burnside. Whilst we had no reports of hoarding and squalor complaints in the last 3 months, EHA is investigating one complex manner and we'll be doing a compulsory clean-up shortly. And they're working with building inspectors, planning officers here, regulatory inspectors. It's a very complex issue that sometimes involves federal, state and local communities and the not-for-profit sector as well, because there's a lot of support services that are required. So it's quite an extensive amount of work when you're looking at the hoarding and swallowing. I just want to highlight some of those benefits that, you know, in 3 months the City of Burnside's got from the Eastern Health Authority. So I commend the report.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Davey? Do you wish to speak? Okay. I shall put the motion. Those who... Oh, sorry, were you wishing to speak?
You talk.
Sorry, Lillian Henschke, sorry.
Can I ask a question of Councillor Cornish, though, or not? I can't.
No, these are just receiving reports, but you can ask him after the meeting.
After the meeting.
Yes.
I might ask administration then. I'll see how I go. From my understanding, not all councils are currently 100% behind EHA. Is that just a little bit of a rumbling that I'm hearing, or is it more than that?
Through the Mayor, there's a view amongst the constituent councils of EHA that it should go through a regular process of self-evaluation to determine whether or not it's in fact delivering the best service it can for its constituent councils at the best value for money. So really that's all that the constituent councils are saying at this point in time. So there's no dissatisfaction with the services being provided by EHA per se. It's simply about making a determination as to whether EHA is as financially accountable as it could be, and whether it's sharpening its pencils as...
So you're saying financially efficient, is that what you're trying to get to? Okay, because I have never heard of any disgruntledness from Burnside Council as the way it's been operating. It's got an excellent chairperson.
Through the Mayor, again, yes, I don't believe there's any dissatisfaction with the service that's being provided. Yeah. It's really about value for money.
Now, Councillor Henschke.
Thank you, Mayor. I had a question about the immunisation for flu vaccine, but it appears I will ask that question outside of this chamber. It's a technical question regarding flu vaccines that the Eastern Health Authority offer, but I've noticed that you can also get a flu vaccine at a chemist or anywhere. So I just was curious about the impact of that over time.
I think one of the issues of flu vaccinations is, number one, they're essential, and number two, they are now broadly offered in chemist shops as well as, of course, your private medical practice, but also organisations like EHA across the state also provide that kind of service to, particularly to vulnerable populations, but also to lots of businesses, lots of staff, organisations within the state. And it's, in the end, it's actually where a person chooses. You know, for older people, they are free, but you still have to pay for your doctor's appointment. You go to EHA, you don't have to do that. So there are advantages in seeking out the best solution, but it is an individual choice that people make. And it is interesting to see the huge growth that Councillor Cornish has mentioned in terms of the Burnside use of flu vaccinations this year is really quite significant compared to the last few years. And it is the threat that we've had 19 deaths already in South Australia. 35. Sorry, it's 35, is it now? 35. So it is a significant issue. So I hope you've all had your flu shots, and if you want to, go and get them from EHA. Okay, sorry, we'll move on to the Highbury Landfill. Oh, did we not? I didn't put it. Sorry. Please, those who are in favour of taking the recommendation. Thank you. Those against? All right, carried unanimously. Now, Highbury Landfill Authority. Anyone wishes to move that? Councillor Lemon, you're moving it. Councillor Dawes seconding. Any questions? No. Those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. Era Water. Someone who'd like to move that? You have a question, Councillor Dawes? No, we'll move it first. we've got a mover in Councillor Lemon. Do you wish to second it? And then Councillor Dawes can ask his question.
Just on page 228 under 2.1, there's been an estimate that the councils will pay a price of the SA water price plus CPI. Is that the normal, perhaps an administration question, not too sure, but is that what normally happens with SA water, that they increase it by CPI each time?
Through the Mayor, we don't actually know what they'll do with their pricing. That comes through a draft budgeting process that they do annually, and they release that through a consultation process, I understand. That hasn't occurred yet, and no information has been made available.
So last year it went up by...
I don't know the answer to that question, but I can find that information out for you.
Yeah,
I can take that on notice and provide it.
Yes. My next question is kind of for Councillor Hughes in the future. We have an operating deficit of 661,000, and if you look at the operations cost and the general manager's cost for 3 days a week, that makes up a significant amount of it. So I just want to ensure that Councillor Hughes is fully on top of that when she goes to her first meeting shortly.
She should have known how to be on the board.
Right, any further questions? Right, we had a mover in Councillor Lemon. We had a seconder in Councillor Cornish. Anyone, either of you wish to, or do you wish to speak, Councillor Lemon? Okay, so we move the motion. Those in favour, those against, carried unanimously. Next one is report from the, recommendation. We've done that one. Eastern Regional Alliance, nothing. Mayor's reports. Can I have someone to move to receive the Mayor's report? Councillor Jones, seconded Councillor Dawes. Those in favour, carried unanimously. Reports of members...
Mayor, sorry. I think we've skipped past 14.43
Have
and
I missed one?
14.44, maybe even 14.42 as well.
Oh, sorry, apologies. They had to be done. Thank you for pointing that out. I thought they were in that first one. Happy to move 14.4.2. Moved Councillor Cornish, seconded Councillor Hughes. All those in favour? Those against, carried unanimously. 14.4.3. Councillor Cornish, Councillor Jones. Those in favour? Those against? Had a couple who didn't have their hand up, but can't say unanimously. 14.4.4. Councillor Hughes, Councillor Jones. Those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. Now we've done the Mayor's report, so reports of delegates, members. Yes?
These reports of members, delegates and working parties go back some 3 months.
Yes.
We're going to be here for the rest of the night.
No, we're not going that far back. 1 month.
Oh, okay. But I'd like to move that they are included in the minutes. I'd like to move that they're included in the minutes without me having to read it all out.
Is that acceptable? So they don't have to be in for those people who are sitting at home?
So I move that that the delegates' reports get included in the minutes.
All right, thank you. Is there a seconder for that? Yes. Councillor Davey? All right. Now, has anyone anything that they wish to add to it before? Or is anyone not providing, or doesn't wish to provide, or has not yet provided?
I'll do it later.
You'll do it next time? Okay. All right.
See, that's a lot to get through.
Seconded. Those in favour? Those against? Thank you. Hopefully we can keep up. Council correspondence, I just need someone to move and second so that it is recorded. Councillor Lemon moved, Councillor Davies seconded the letter to Christopher Pine. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Any other business?
When we reference council resolutions, as we do through the body of a lot of our reports, could we put the year alongside them too, please? Is that something that's difficult to do? It's just, it really helps with the point of reference, especially those of us who've been around for a while. The month or the year, you might be able to do that. Yes, so that would really help. Thank you very much. Right, there are no confidential items, and they'll declare this meeting closed at 9:29 p.m. We don't have to move anything.